Battlefield Bad Company Hardline. The more and more we hear about Battlefield Hardline, the more and more this does seem to be the case. Of course, by now we've seen multiple different trailers for the single player and the multiplayer aspects of the game. We've also had ourselves a not so open closed beta, and of course now at Gamescom we've seen more of a brand new game mode called Hotwire. And on top of that, myself and a number of other YouTubers have travelled across to San Francisco to play this game, test it out, talk to the developers, and see where this project is heading. Now on those trips to San Francisco, we got a chance to play some different game modes and maps that we're still not allowed to tell you guys about. So there are some aspects to this game that you guys have still yet to find out about. But this coming weekend is your opportunity to find out some more information. I will be heading down to Eurogamer tomorrow through till Saturday, so if you are down there, don't forget to try and find me. I will be tweeting out my locations and have some prizes for any of my subscribers who find me, so if you are heading down there, keep an eye on your Twitter. But most importantly, I will have chance to speak to the general manager and head developer of Battlefield Hardline, Steve Paputis. Now I've had a chance to meet him before in San Francisco, but this time I'll have a chance to hopefully ask him some questions. So any questions you want to have answered about Battlefield Hardline, stop right now and leave those down in the comments below. I'm going to try and gather as many questions from my subscribers as I can. So right now, as you're watching this video, scroll down and leave all your questions about BF Hardline down below. Hopefully I'll pick your question and you may get it answered by Steve Paputis. Now recently we learned that we won't be seeing the return of the game mode Rush to Battlefield Hardline. Now I know straight away this was going to get a strong reaction because of course Rush is a classic Battlefield game mode. In fact, it's the game mode that got me into the series. I joined Battlefield with Bad Company 2, and in my time on that game I probably spent about 90% of it playing Rush on Arica Harbour. Not only was that one of the best maps in Battlefield Bad Company 2, but probably in the entire Battlefield series. And of course playing Rush on that map was actually a great experience. It needed great teamwork, you had to play the objective, and if you won that game, be it defending or attacking, it was very satisfying. Now of course the game mode was equally as popular in the next title, Battlefield 3, but I think we all know with Battlefield 4 this game mode definitely took a massive dip in popularity. Now whether or not this was just down to the design of the maps and the way the game mode, let's be honest, didn't really work on a lot of the maps, or whether or not it's just a style of play from the community has changed, that playing the objective and playing as a team just isn't as popular as it used to be on Bad Company 2. Now whether or not this is the reason why Visceral have decided to drop the game mode, I'm unsure. Maybe it's just they want to replace it, it's just an old game mode now, but we are seeing the return of other Battlefield classics. Conquest is making a return, albeit by a different name. It's now the name Turf War, but for all intents and purposes it is still the same game mode. So why we're seeing the return of some classic Battlefield game modes and not others is still confusing. So the first question I'll definitely be asking Steve is why we've seen the removal of Rush, and if they have any plans to replace it with a similar game mode, or maybe just something completely different. Now as I said at the start of the video, the more and more we see of Battlefield Hardline, the more it reminds me of Bad Company 2. It's definitely nowhere near as serious as Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and it does seem to have that old school tongue-in-cheek that we did see in the Bad Company series. But weirdly, it doesn't seem to be getting the same reception as Bad Company. For the reasons we love Bad Company, people seem to be hating Battlefield Hardline. I've heard a lot of people complaining, saying the game doesn't take itself seriously, it's too much of an arcade style game, but these are all the things we loved about Bad Company 2. I'm definitely still adamant, and it is something I've mentioned before, that if this game was called Battlefield Bad Company Hardline rather than just Battlefield Hardline, it would probably get a much better reception than it is doing so far. Now I think when this game was first publicly announced and showcased, it did get a pretty bad rep. A lot of people weren't wanting to see a police-themed game. So I think the developers now do have an uphill battle to try and prove to the Battlefield community that this is going to be a worthy successor to Battlefield 4. Now when we first saw the game in a private situation, of course we were among the first people to ever hear about this title. We had mixed reactions. We were first shown the single player and we said to the developers, look, when you showcase this game, you have to start with a multiplayer. If you go with the single player, it's just not going to be a strong start. And luckily the developers did listen to us. Of course, the first thing we saw from this game was a multiplayer trailer, and I do think that definitely helped the situation. But from taking a look at where that game was when we first saw it back in May to where the game now stands months down the line but still months from release, there has definitely been a massive improvement. The developers truly are listening to what the community wants. They've been taking advice from fellow YouTubers, other guys who played and tested the game. So I'm hoping there is still a lot in store for this game, and I really am hoping the developers do win this uphill battle, because I know and I expect this game will be a great success, but we've just got to prove that to the community. Now, something else that we've seen in recent days that does show that Hardline is tending to lean more towards the Bad Company style than the Battlefield style is the return of the Tracer Dart. Now, the Tracer Dart was a tool we last saw in Bad Company 2, and basically it allowed you to lock onto aircraft. In Bad Company 2 we didn't have heat-seeking missile launchers. In fact, all you seemed to have was RPGs, which of course just fired rockets in a straight line. So if you did want to lock onto an aircraft, you had to use a Tracer Dart to fire and attach to that aircraft, which then gave it a heat signal to allow you to lock your rockets onto it. Now, of course, with Battlefield Hardline, based around robbers and police, I don't think either of those forces would have anti-aircraft heat-seeking technology, so it does make sense to see the return of the Tracer Dart. Of course, this probably will mean that shooting down aircraft will be a lot more difficult than it ever was in Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4, but it also means that aircraft will now have a useful role again. I think we all know how many times you'll jump in a helicopter in Battlefield 3 or 4, and within 1 or 2 seconds you have about 15 different heat-seeking missiles coming your way. So the news of this alteration may come as some good or some bad news for you, depending on whether or not you're an aircraft player. So down in the comment section below, I want to hear from you. What is your opinion on the fact that we're no longer going to see Rush in Battlefield Hardline? And of course, I want to know what you think on the return of the Tracer Dart. Will it make a big change to the way infantry players interact with aircraft? Tell me down below. And of course, leave all your questions for Steve Paputis. I'll try and get as many of your questions answered as I possibly can. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, a like is always appreciated. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.